And I'm Bella,
Welcome to Holy Matrimony,
a podcast about my journey into the world of professional wrestling.
where every week I'm going to guide you through my ultimate obsession.
But first, let's go through all of our podcast duties here. We do release new episodes every Thursday, and those are released on most of the major podcast players as well as YouTube for those of you watching us. If you'll also follow us on social media, we are on X and Instagram at Holy Matrimony. That's MATCHrimony. We're also on TikTok at holy.matrimony. Same spelling, of course. And if you'll please like, subscribe, especially if you're on YouTube, leave a comment for us. And like I said, if you'll follow us on social media, that helps a lot so we can get this out there.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
Mhm.
Get into episode 2.
Let's do it.
So today's episode be a little different from last week. We're going to be talking about our favorite wrestlers.
Yes, definitely some of more so you than me because you have a lot more of a history with it, but some of your like all-time favorites, and then we'll definitely spend a nice amount of time on the current wrestlers, especially leading up to Wrestlemania this
Okay.
weekend.
All right. So I can start by talking through. I walked a little bit through like my history with pro wrestling last time. So I think starting my wrestling journey and talking through like my favorites, it's really important to think about like who really was my favorite when I first started. I don't want to go too in depth because I know there's a lot we can talk about. But first starting wrestling around that early, I was in like middle school era, so SmackDown was what I first started watching. That was around the Rey Mysterio time. So Rey Mysterio was somebody that I really gravitated towards at first. I don't know if he would be considered like one of my favorites right away. He eventually did become that.
Okay. I mean, I love Rey Mysterio too. He was probably one of the first ones that I like remember and have kept like through, and you obviously see his name all the time. So he's like definitely one of the more popular ones, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I think definitely both of us coming from like Hispanic backgrounds and stuff. So somebody who, Rey Mysterio's stature and like he is kind of transcended just wrestling in a lot of aspects. I wouldn't say as big as like obviously movie stars and stuff that we have now, but he's somebody who's been more in the culture.
Oh, definitely like in wrestling. Yeah. That's
Yes,
what I mean. Like he's definitely popular for wrestling.
yes,
Um, I think that's probably a name that even people who don't really watch it know or have
mm-hmm.
heard. So
Yeah, and I mean
definitely,
the mask is iconic, right? People
of
have
course.
seen that, so for sure he was somebody who I gravitated towards it right away for obvious reasons. It's a kid and stuff, but really one of the first times that like somebody that hooked me on wrestling, and I can remember the match, remember what happened. It was a SmackDown, and it was a battle royale for the World Heavyweight Championship. I'd never seen anybody like it. It was Kurt Angle. So
Okay.
he had come on, and I remember being on the phone with my friend, and I was like, "Who is this dude?" And he told me like, "Hey, he's from Raw. He's from this other show." And that whole match, I just remember him like the commentators were saying he's an Olympic gold medalist, and again, I had never seen, I didn't know who he was. So like that match sticks with me, and that he sticks with me as somebody really remember being like drawn to right away. I know now, like looking back, he's not somebody I talk about to you very often. I'm obviously he doesn't wrestle anymore and stuff, but he was somebody right away that I gravitated towards.
Yeah, I definitely think through everything, he's definitely not a name like you mentioned, but like he's never been a name you talked about. Probably talked about it a lot more recently,
Mm-hmm.
talking about Chad Gable and how, I mean, you said like he's possibly like the next like Kurt Angle. But yeah, definitely not one that you've ever like expressed to me a lot that was like your favorite.
Yeah, and again, I think that goes from I liked him a lot. He went away from WWE, so he still wrestled. I still watch a lot of his TNA stuff, but we're talking about specifically WWE. So he was away from WWE for a long, long time, and so again, not being there, not being seen as much, he wasn't as big as I went on. So, um, but definitely somebody who influenced me early on to really enjoy it.
Yeah. But I mean, like I said, not one that you talked about often.
No.
So what about all the ones that you've always talked about and
Yes.
you've, tried to get me to watch because they were your favorites? Like those are really the ones that I'm interested like how you got started on.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So I think, I mean, there's a couple big ones, obviously, that we could talk through. Who's everybody's favorite, right? So for me, being a middle school kid, John Cena. It was the time where he was super champ. He was, a superhero. And so I think I started watching right at the time where like he, he drew me in. And then obviously, and you don't probably know this because you're just now getting started, but the longer you watch and the more John Cena's around, the more he starts to become not as liked, or like it's almost cool to not like John Cena. And so I definitely fell into that camp where I really liked them and it became cool to kind of not like him. And now it's kind of full circle and it's cool to like John Cena again.
Yeah, everybody loves John Cena.
Yes.
Like he's probably, well, besides The Rock,
Right.
he's probably like the next biggest name because obviously he broke out into like acting.
Yes.
But yeah, because I wasn't watching at the time of John Cena,
Right.
but I knew who he was, because we were like coming up at the time of like YouTube and stuff, like when
Mm-hmm.
YouTube first started. Like he's somebody like you started seeing like in the early days of like social media and all that because he was so popular and big. So I always knew who he was.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't watch him as a wrestler until recently.
Right. So yeah, when I first started, he was a dude that I gravitated towards. I remember going to like my first live show like I talked to, and he was there, and it was, a lot of things felt surreal. But then as you continue to watch, and from you go from middle school to high school, again, it got cool to not like John Cena because he's a really good guy. He's a really like doesn't have any edge to him or anything. So when that starts to happen, you start to gravitate towards bad guys a little bit or somebody else who maybe is a little tougher. And so I really gravitated at that time to Edge,
Yeah.
who's somebody that you've heard me talk about now.
Oh, you talk about him so much. I think we have some edges up here.
We do.
A couple. Yeah.
Yeah.
Edges definitely always been one that you talked about. I obviously didn't know him at all. You
Right.
showed me recently some of his stuff, but yeah, he's definitely one that you have talked about. I always don't know who's like your all-time favorite because it seems like at times like you'll switch it, but Edge has always come up time and time again.
Yeah, and that's hard for me to decide like somebody's an all-time favorite of mine, but he's definitely up there as somebody who I really gravitate towards, and I would consider him one of my all-time favorites. I mean, I also at that time I was getting really into like reading wrestling biographies and stuff, so I read his biography and I really liked like that was also at the time where I would go back and watch old matches. I remember my parents taking me to Kmart and I'd buy a whole bunch of like old DVDs, and his older stuff was on there. So I really liked him, and again still would consider him like I think he's one of the best bad guys that we had, at least at the time that I was watching. I'm not saying anything before, but at the time I was watching, he was definitely like the best bad guy. And so again, not liking John Cena because it's cool to not like him anymore, you gravitate towards the bad guy.
Yeah, well, we know how I feel about that. So
Yes.
obviously, yeah.
Yes. So that kind of leads me into talking about more recent people and stuff, or not more recent, but just leading into some of the other people I liked. Um, I've talked about him a little bit. I think you've heard me talk about him a little bit, but Rob Van Dam was somebody who,
Oh yeah.
out of that feud, there was a feud with John Cena and Edge, and Rob Van Dam kind of became this key focal point in there, and I gravitated towards him too right away. And
Yes.
like again, I know you've never really seen a lot. I've shown you like one or two things maybe here and there.
Yeah, maybe though. I don't even I unless he was in like one of the like elimination chambers or something. I don't even know if you showed
He
me.
was in one. That's
Oh,
it
okay.
for that.
Then
Yeah,
yeah, so
that
then
you saw.
I don't know much about him. I mean, you've always talked about him too though.
Mm-hmm.
So like the name,
Right.
it was one that was like when you'd quiz me on like
Yeah.
names.
Yes.
He's one of the ones I could remember.
Yeah. And again, don't even really fully understand for myself why I liked him so much, but something about him was just he was cool. He was like a different alternative. The things he could do in the ring, even now at this age, he still wrestles, and it's crazy. Like some of the stuff that he can do. And so, yeah, he was my guy for a long time.
Yeah.
But then kind of that leads into the next person who it's really relevant to talk about now would be CM Punk.
Which maybe we'll wait for because we have CM Punk coming up currently.
Yes.
And maybe we'll talk about him when it comes to WrestleMania.
For sure. Yeah.
But yeah, oh yeah, you've always like I think that's like one of the first shirts you bought, like with me like knowing you were buying shirts. I think
Yes.
it was one of his for sure.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure you still have it. It probably
Yes.
doesn't like it's probably like worn and stuff, but you loved that shirt. Like he's one that you loved.
Yes. So CM Punk was definitely somebody that we can get into,
Yep.
right? But then I do think there's a big not a big difference, but there's a difference being a wrestling fan, like when I was a wrestling fan, and like now I can look back at people and say like, oh, I really like their stuff. Maybe I didn't appreciate it as much when I was a kid, but I really liked it, and now they've kind of made me a fan of theirs. And somebody I think that like I would say that about is like Randy Orton. At the
Yes.
time, Randy Orton was fighting Cena and fighting Edge and all these people. I liked him. I thought he was cool, but I didn't really have a strong feeling towards him. Now looking back, I can say he is like one of the people I would consider like a favorite of mine. And I think it's just because of everything he's done. And as an adult, you can appreciate a lot of the things he's done more than you could as a kid.
Oh yeah. I think he's another big name that everybody loves. And obviously he was like really popular for his RKO, like,
Mm-hmm.
when it came to memes and everything, like that was huge.
Right.
So he's just like a name I think people recognize as well, whether they watch wrestling or not.
Right. And then I think another one of those names, somebody I really liked, and again, probably stems from me like reading his biography and stuff, but it was Chris Jericho,
Of course, yes.
which you've also heard me talk about Chris Jericho,
Always.
right? Uh,
He has the band too, right? He's the
yes,
singer. Yes.
Fozzy.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think like goes to show you, even like he was on The Masked Singer, and I instantly was like, I know who that
Oh
is.
my gosh, yeah. I was in like 3 for anybody who watches The Masked Singer. That was the probably fastest you got somebody. It was in like 2 seconds. You're like hands down because from like the clue package, I think they purposely threw that off. But you were
Hmm.
like, oh my gosh, the moment the voice. You're like, that's Chris Jericho. You're like hands down, not changing it, and it was.
It was,
It
yeah,
was.
yeah. It's just again somebody who I gravitate towards. Like he came back in like 2007. I started really reading his books, watching his older stuff, and then seeing him from 2007 really evolve into like this person who could always change his character. And that was something that we'll get into more about why you like people and not, but like character is a big thing. And so his character at that time was, I was super enthralled with.
Nice.
But kind of leads into, and then it's a bigger topic for a different day, but somebody he had a really big feud with, who I also really like, is Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, and we're not going to talk about him today
Right.
because we have a future episode
Yes.
for that one. So, but I know you love Shawn Michaels,
Yes.
the Heartbreak Kid,
Yes. So
but we are going to save that.
I will just say that he's probably one of my all-time favorites, also with
Oh, I
Edge.
know.
So Shawn
And
Michaels and Edge, two of my
that's why
all-time
that's going to be
favorites.
a different
Yes.
episode because I have my thoughts
You have
on
your
that.
opinions. Yes. So, um, and again, now looking back at things and seeing people who've maybe had impacts in the business and stuff, like how do you not like the Undertaker, Kane, right? These people who've just been around forever.
Which, yeah, so going into my history, obviously when I was watching The Rock, right, he's just like the coolest person ever in wrestling, and I think he's showing a lot of that
Still
now.
is. Yep.
So, he was probably like the first that I remember being like, oh, yeah, he's so cool. And then, I mean, I remember because like from back, obviously you would know dates and stuff better, but I remember from like initially watching like I Like China because
Mm-hmm.
obviously I was a girl, so I was like, well, of the girls, she was like my favorite. Um, but then of course The Undertaker. I mean, Undertaker and Kane. I liked both. You know what I
Right.
mean? I like kind of like dark and like that kind of like vibe.
Yeah.
So I loved both of them.
Right.
Um, I have to say the masked Kane because you showed me recently that there was a point in time when Kane was not masked, and that
Yes.
was like shocking to me because I've only ever seen him with his
Yes.
mask on. And it freaked
And
me out.
when I started watching, he did not have the mask.
Yeah, and so
So.
I was like, "Who is that?" And you're like, "That's Kane," and I'm like, "Nope, it's not Kane." But those those were like my favorites, obviously. But yeah, Undertaker, just incredible.
Right.
Still love him, and even though I wasn't watching a little bit later, but that's like who it was. So I didn't have like a lot, obviously, because I watched so young, and then I stopped watching. So all my favorites are definitely like I have a place for those people because those were like the originals.
Right.
And then, like I said, seeing somebody like The Rock today, he's still just so good. But a lot of obviously my favorites are this current time that we're
Yes.
sitting in now.
Which I definitely want to get into. And I think something I do want to mention when you mentioned The Rock, though, is somebody who again he wasn't around when I was around, and so me going back to it and really watching, I can really appreciate what The Rock did. But I have to say Stone Cold,
Oh, yes. Hmm.
right? And I think it's probably a topic for another day is Stone Cold versus The Rock. But
Yes.
going back to what we talked about with the live event, like a picture of Stone Cold comes on or a video of Stone Cold and everybody goes crazy. I think it's very similar to the Rock effect.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, because we talked about that when we went to the live event. My first one, they
Yes.
did that promo for Steve Austin, and it was like insane.
You'd think he was in the building. Like that's
Oh
how
my gosh, yeah, that's
crazy.
how they acted like he was there. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even want to know how they would act if he was there. But of course, we've seen that with The Rock now too. Now that
Hmm.
he came back, it was just like craziness with these crowds, and so yeah, they're just like these really big names. But also, I think rightfully so. They did a lot. They were really good. We love their characters.
Oh yeah, for sure. And but I think that goes to show like the impact people can have, and when somebody gravitates towards a person or they really like a person that's their favorite, that that stays with them. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
So
That's definitely what happened with me, at least. Even though I had this huge gap in it, I mean, like The Rock, he was just always there for me. And
right,
obviously, I watched him in wrestling, and then to see him in movies, I remember it was like so cool because I think like the Scorpion King, he was in the Scorpion King, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. That's like The Rock.
right.
And so I've always like watched his movies and stuff because he's just like one of like my earliest memories of just honestly anything or anybody that I could remember like as a kid, like remembering who they are,
Mm-hmm.
like as a celebrity.
Yeah,
So yeah, loved it.
yeah. And I mean that again goes to show he's coming back and how good he is currently.
Yes.
Like
So
heads and shoulders above a lot of people.
oh, for sure. So that's our biggest topic of today
Yes.
is this idea of the current wrestlers
Yes.
that we both love, that you love.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, some of them that you've mentioned are also wrestling now. Um, but it is cool to just know a little bit about the ones from the past, especially the ones that I haven't seen yet. So that'll definitely be fun for you to show me and teach me about later.
Yes.
But I think what's so crazy, like obviously as a kid, and I guess you don't think about it as a kid, I don't know why I liked The Rock so much. I just did.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, maybe it was just because he's like the biggest, right? But then going to that live event and now watching, Raw and these pay per views, it's such a weird like phenomenon or thing when you just like somebody. Because I couldn't explain why when I was at the show, I was like, oh, I really like that person.
Right.
And as I keep watching more shows and seeing new people, it's like there's just something about it, and you just like immediately attach, or at least I did.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, there's just some people that I was like, oh, love them,
Right.
and it's like I don't know if that's like everybody's experience with it. Like you just like immediately like a wrestler if you have to like go through the motions, but I can't even explain why I liked certain wrestlers that first time I saw them or anything, except maybe we know there's a theme with the wrestlers that I like for the most part.
Yes. Well, and we'll talk about that, but I do want to bring up like I think there is that initial point where you do just gravitate towards somebody, right? You just really like them because of something that you can't explain. As you get into it more and you watch more, you're gonna see people who maybe you didn't like, and that you start to like them too. That will happen, I believe, at some point. But definitely, I think that the ones that grab, like, you know, jump out at you, there's definitely a theme there.
Yes. And so for all those who know me, this
Mm-hmm.
probably would be no surprise.
Yeah,
The majority of the wrestlers I like are bad guys.
I would say almost all of them. Yes.
Pretty much all of them. There's a few that's not, but especially my main few, absolutely they're bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that at the time,
Right.
but clearly that's why I liked them, or that's part of it. It was the character, and I just love that. So anybody who knows me, no surprise. It's probably no surprise for you that most of the people you like are good guys, or at least right
Yes.
now, because we know they
Yes.
can switch and change. But
Well, and that's what I was saying. There was definitely a point in my wrestling, like watching wrestling, that I really gravitated towards the bad guys because it was kind of the cool thing to do. But yes, currently, most of the ones that I am liking or a fan of are good guys,
yeah,
are
so it makes
faces.
it very interesting for us because we pretty much like opposite people, or
We kind
people
of
who are feuding,
naturally fell into that,
which is great. It
which
makes
makes
it
it more
fun.
fun, right? Yes.
Yes, it makes it fun not only to watch, but coming up on WrestleMania, it's really exciting. And then, like for the podcast, it's going to be really fun because it's a lot of conversation we can have around certain people and
Mm-hmm.
why I like them and you like the other. There's a few we like together, but the majority we are separate on,
Right.
which I love.
So do you want to start talking about like maybe one of your first, or who do you want to talk about first? I guess.
Well, I'll probably talk about Drew McIntyre
Yeah.
first
Okay.
because at the live show that we went to, he was like the first one that drew my attention in. Obviously, I saw like the Stone Cold promo, but I already knew him. Like I knew who he was and
Yes.
I'd seen stuff from him. But they did that Drew McIntyre promo and where he was talking about how, he won WrestleMania during COVID and nobody was there and he was talking about, Seth freaking Rollins. And I don't know what it was about the promo. But I was like, I kind of like this guy. I was like, I'm seeing it. I like it. And then I remember Seth Rollins comes out and he's talking. And I remember thinking like, dang, this guy talks like a lot.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like annoying. I just remember that being like, wow, he like talks a lot. And it's not that I don't like Seth Rollins, but you know me. I'm completely anybody against Seth Rollins, I'm like, sure, because I just think he talks too much. So I'm like, shut him up.
Right.
And I remember Drew came out and just attacked him. And I was like, thank God somebody shut him up. I was like, I knew I liked this guy for some reason. And so it just like spiraled. Like it was like his promo was good. He shut up Seth. And then they've kind of had the feud going pretty much
Mm-hmm.
ever since.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, this is good. And he's like progressively getting like more bad, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know what it was. It was just something about his promo immediately got me.
Just attracted you right away.
For sure. And I don't even know. Like, it probably wasn't even like the greatest promo or anything. It just, I was like, okay, I'm seeing it. I'm liking it. I think it got me into like the drama of it.
Yeah.
And then ever since he's only done stuff that I love.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
So,
Well, I was kind of explaining to you yesterday, I think, that like, there are many different types of wrestling fans. And there's wrestling fans that really focus on like the in-ring, the work, what they can do, the moves. And there's wrestling fans that focus on the drama. There's some obviously that kind of focus on both. But I think knowing you, the drama is what you like.
oh my gosh, yes, I love it. And
Right.
I love, them like going at each other and, it's, yeah, I do like the actual wrestling. I'm getting more into that as we
Mm-hmm.
go. And we've talked, there's been ones I've watched. I'm like, I'm not sure about this match. I don't think it's as good as this match. So I'm like definitely getting into that. But yes, absolutely the drama, them fighting. It's so exciting for me. And I think that's a lot of the stuff that you would skip, if anything, like when you would not have time and you watch like years ago.
Yes.
And I would be the opposite. If I had to
Yes.
skip something, I'd be like, oh, we could skip the match and I just want to see what they're saying.
Yes.
But so that might be like why that attracted me to him right away too, because it was like so drama at the time because it was going into
Mm-hmm.
Crown Jewel. And that's what they were really playing up on. And I just loved it.
And since then, I think you said that like his promos, you feel he's made really good points, right? Like the things he said, you've really agreed with. You're like, yeah, shut him up. Like you're right, right? Is that kind of something to make you even like him even more?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I will say this, and obviously there's a lot of people who won't agree because of a lot of the people I like. I really think the bad guys make the best points.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they are the they just hit it spot on every time. And the good guys, they talk, and it's like some of them are good. I like some of them, but I'm like, man, those bad guys they really say the right thing, and it just gets me pumped up.
I mean, that's kind of a thing, right? Like the bad guy saying the right thing. That's from your point of view, obviously.
I think it's right though.
I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about him yet, but that plays right along into one of your other favorites,
Oh yes, Gunther or
the,
Gunther,
the Intercontinental Champion,
if you want to, say it a little more
traditional.
in his speed. Yeah. Um, yes, I with him too, because he came out, and I remember like he came out with his little people Ludwig and
Giovanni.
Giovanni, yeah. And I was like, okay, like what an intro. I didn't know the Intercontinental. I knew none of that.
Right.
And so you told me after, like, oh, he's actually been it for like, gosh, now it's like what, almost 400 days or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, cool. But I don't know, like it just when he was coming out, I was like, whatever. But the show we went to, it was The Miz had his little show,
Mm-hmm.
and I was excited for The Miz too because I didn't know The Miz from wrestling. I've
Right.
known The Miz from like everything else he's done.
Pop culture, all that other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was excited. I was like, oh, this is The Miz, like that's cool. And that episode, he came out and he spoke to The Miz. Because I don't know if they had some. I don't think they had something in Crown Jewel, but they had like a thing that they were gonna fight like the next week or something.
Right.
And I remember he starts talking. Gunther starts talking, and he was like, the best way I can explain it, and this is gonna sound so bad because people are gonna be like, wow, like bully
Yeah. Full
to
bully.
The Miz.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, dang, that is like so good. And it like got me like so pumped. Of course, the crowd was like mad because he was like saying stuff. They're like, boo. And I was like, ooh, I like this. I was like, this is like really good. And I was like, he's like so good at it.
Yep.
Like, I think like his presence is just so like intimidating. And then when he like speaks like that, he's got like that smirk, and it's just like so good.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, dang, I think I like this guy too. And then the next week when we watched, he's just like that, and I just love it.
Right.
And so like I can't even tell you of like between him and Drew, because those are like my first two, and they're
Yes.
probably some of like my favorite too.
Right.
I can't even tell you like which one I like better, but there's something about Gunther and his little bully ways that I just love. And like I said, people who know me, they're not gonna be surprised by that either. But oh gosh, like he's just, it's so exciting. And obviously he's been the Intercontinental Champion for so long. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's because he's great.
I mean, I think that now looking back, you may feel a little differently, right? But like, at the time, he was saying stuff that you're like, I feel that,
Oh yeah, I'm like, dang, that's like really good. I was like, obviously that's mean, but I'm like, wow, that's maybe some of the stuff I've thought before, like in situations.
Yep.
And I feel like every time he speaks, he's just so good. And it's like he has like a presence.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the biggest thing with
like
him.
a movie villain, like a Bond villain or something.
Oh my gosh, yeah, he's
Yeah.
just like so good. And then, like the Austrian thing is obviously really cool.
Mm-hmm.
It just like fits, like his whole character is just like perfect for me.
Right. That makes sense. So, I mean, I can get into a little bit of current favorites. We'll save the big two probably for last.
Yes, because
right?
we're going to talk about that, yes.
But you talked about Drew, so now's probably my time to talk about CM Punk.
Yes.
Yes. So, obviously, when I was watching I watched CM Punk debut. I saw him go from there to, no, you don't know this, I'm going to just show you at one point, but the pipe bomb where he has this great promo that people love to this day. I saw him leave. I saw him come back to wrestling. I saw him come back to WWE. So, like, I've been there for all those times. And CM Punk's somebody that just captivating to me. Like, I think that he's one of the best promo people in modern history for sure. Like, his in-ring work, he may be a little older now, but his older in-ring work was really good. Like, so when, I mean, you saw me react when he came back. I think that his return at Survivor Series to me was like surreal.
Oh yeah, I mean, so is everybody, right? He's been very big when you watch all the shows he's on. Everybody loves him. And yes, you were so excited for that because he is just one of your favorites. So, and the thing is I like him too.
Right.
I really do. But obviously, he's got a little thing going on with Drew right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's Drew for me all the way. Now, last week's Raw, when they had their little spat back and forth and their little talking, I loved it. Because I think they're both really good.
Yes.
And they, like, played so well together. But, of course, I'm like, well, Drew. And, he did. He's the, like, he hurt him, But, hurt him. But I just love this, like, whole storyline they have.
Yes.
And like I said, I do like CM Punk,
Mm-hmm.
but when it comes to Drew, it's like, well, no, I'm going to go on Drew's side. But I do see why you like him, because I think he's just so good at his whole character as well. And I think he's just so kind of like confident and just like he doesn't have to go like crazy, right?
No.
He just goes up there, says what he wants to say, and it's great.
Well, and that's where, like, again, me personally, I like Seth Rollins. I've watched Seth Rollins the whole time, but like, I think there's a big difference in Seth Rollins and CM Punk. And CM Punk, it seems so natural. Where Seth Rollins is kind of going over the top in certain things.
Yes, which is why I like love to hate Seth Rollins.
Yes.
Because he's good, especially like his matches are so good. But I'm like, man, his whole like character is like so annoying, you know?
Yes.
But it's also like really cool. Like so I kind of love it.
Right.
It's like I love like it's like a love-hate relationship with him.
Yes.
But that's why I do think last week that whole little promo was so good with
Mm-hmm.
him, Drew, and Seth. Like I loved it.
Right. So that would be, again, coming back to it, somebody who I really love right now. He's one of my favorites currently. Maybe of all time, but definitely currently.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think it makes sense. Like, 'cause I think like everybody was really excited for him to come back, and he's come back, and I think he's definitely proven. I mean, it sucks because he's injured right now,
Mm-hmm.
but I think he's like proven why, and I think he just like each week it's just like better and better that we see him.
Right. So I think the next one that we should talk about is, as a group, somebody you don't like, but you like one particular person, the
Yes,
Judgment Day. And who's your favorite in Judgment Day?
Damian Priest,
Yes.
and I think that one was because we obviously they were there
Mm-hmm.
on that first live show, and I was really excited to see because we knew Dom, like,
Yes.
and you were like, oh, that's like Rey Mysterio's son. And I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, I didn't know like his son wrestled. And Dom, obviously, it's like, you don't like Dom, but you do, right? Because that's
Yeah.
his whole character.
So you're supposed to hate him. So
Yeah.
it's like, he's really good at being hated.
Oh, yeah. So it's like, he's so much fun.
Yes.
But I remember when we watched, like, Rhea was, I thought, I was like, okay, well, so Rhea Ripley's like their like leader and stuff because the way she was talking and stuff when she was there. And with me with Rhea, I'm like love hate with Rhea too. But then I think they had a match that day because it was Damien. I don't know if it was like a tag team match or something, but I remember like ever since too, I'm like he's like the only serious one in this group, and he's like so tall, like he's so big, and I'm like he's like the only one that makes sense. And I get it, that's the point of the group, right? It's like funny, but watching him, I'm like, well, he's like the only good one in the group. And I was like, oh, well, he's like really cool. So yeah, I love him. The rest of the Judgment Day, I'm like,
Yeah.
Except Dom, he's like fun to watch. But
Right.
I'm like, eh. But Damian Priest, I was like, he's so cool.
Right. Which is, again, kind of funny because Judgment Day, my favorite in Judgment Day is Finn Balor. Because
Yes, you love
I
him.
have seen his in-ring work since he debuted. I think he's a really good in-ring worker wrestler. But I agree that he doesn't really show it as much with Part Judgment Day, and he may be overshadowed personality-wise.
Oh, for
But
sure.
it's just so funny that we have completely different favorites, even within that one group.
Oh yeah, because I'm like, yeah, Finn's all right.
Yeah.
I was like, but I think Damian does all the work. We love to have that little banter, but
Yes.
yeah, once again, I don't know why, but I was like, oh yeah, he's really cool. I think I like
Mhm.
him. Plus, the whole vibe and look, like with the purple and like the black and like the leathers, I just love it. I love
Right.
their look. And I think you told me like he got a lot of his inspiration from The Undertaker.
Undertaker, Razor Ramon, big
Which-
ones for him.
Really cool. So I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, okay, well that makes sense too.
Yeah. Which, I mean, something we haven't talked about. This is not a long thing for this podcast, but just so you know, Edge was the one that started the Judgment Day, so I have to kind of like them.
Oh yeah,
And
you've
he
not
got
told
kicked,
me
then he
that.
got kicked out. So yes.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense. He doesn't really fit. He doesn't really fit the vibe of the
Yeah,
Judgment Day,
yes, but he started it.
but okay,
so,
interesting. I did not know that.
Yes.
Okay, so
Uh,
learn something new
we
every day.
do.
That's what I'm here for.
Do you want to talk about any of like the female wrestlers that you maybe have liked or seen? I know you're still really getting into that side of things.
Yeah, I remember when we were there, the Creed brothers came
Yes.
out. And I was like, who's that like girl with them? Because I was like, she's like jacked. That's Ivy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, she should wrestle. And you're like, she does. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, well, why is she out here with them? Like, you're like, well, she's part of like their like group or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. And then it was like a while before I finally saw her.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if it was like just the way she looked because like she was just so muscular. And I was like, wow, like that's crazy.
Right.
Like that she just looks like that good. And then watching her, I'm like, oh, I do like her. But this last week, I think I have a new favorite female
From seeing her once.
from seeing her one time because I was like, oh, I love the vibe. I love her look. And then, man, she's like a beast. And that's Jade.
Yep.
I think she's so good because I like Nia Jax too.
Yes.
I remember I saw her promo for Crown Jewel and I was like, dang, like, 'cause she kind of has that like mean thing. And it made sense. You told me, well, she's like a bad guy. I'm like, oh, love it. So I really like her too. But yeah, seeing Jade, she's just like, like what she was wearing, like her outfit's like so extra, but she's like, I mean, she's a
Yeah, you
beast.
really gravitate towards like liking like the jacked, like really, really like
Muscular.
larger than life kind of like females.
Yeah, and that probably comes from when I was originally watching.
Right.
And so some of, because I think I even told you, I was like, some of these like women wrestlers, like they're not as like toned or like muscular as like I remember them being like way back. And you're like, yeah, and they're not as much. And then I know it's like watching more and more, seeing the females. I'm like, oh yeah, actually, most of them aren't anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, doesn't mean like I don't like them for that, but it's just because that's what I remember.
Right.
You
You
know,
have
like I said,
to
I like somebody like China.
you have to get used to it again or see something different.
Yeah, and so seeing Jade, like it was so cool, like her
Right.
coming out like that, and amazing.
Yeah. So that'll be really interesting to see like how that grows for you with the more you watch.
Oh, for sure, because I haven't seen a lot of Bianca, but I knew Bianca before,
Mm-hmm.
because you know she was on some of like our game shows and stuff we watch, and but I haven't seen a lot from her.
Right. Because we don't watch SmackDown.
Yeah, definitely not uh, as regularly
Right.
or at all because we watch Raw, and you know I'm baby stepping into this.
Yes.
Um, but I think, and it's cool like that she's gonna fight with Bianca this weekend, and so I think that's gonna be really. I'm excited for that one.
Yes. Yeah. I'd agree. It's just interesting it's for me to see you and to see who you're gonna like, and as you're seeing more and more people, to see who you gravitate towards. And I know you naturally gravitate towards the bad guys, but it's gonna be really cool to see because some of the people I really like, you just don't have anything for, you don't care about at all.
No, like Sami Zayn.
Sami Zayn is one that I've really liked for a long time.
I am not a fan of Sami Zayn. I wasn't a fan of Sami Zayn that very first day,
Yes.
and that's probably like I like, or why, sorry, that's why I like Gunther even more
Mm-hmm.
because this week he just absolutely got him, and I'm so excited to see them this weekend. But yeah, Sami Zayn's one that you liked, and I just don't like him. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just
Something
don't
about
see
it
it.
just doesn't gravitate. Like you don't draw towards it at all.
No, which is funny because a lot of people like him. He's definitely like a crowd favorite, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
like I don't care.
Right.
But it makes sense. Once again, he's like a good guy, and I like the people that he's pretty much always been against since I started watching.
That's true. Yeah. He's
Like anytime he's ever fought
'cause
anybody, it's somebody that I
he was
like
like
pretty
against
much.
Damian Priest, and you like Damian. He was against
Yes.
Gunther. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, going back to SmackDown,
Yes.
it's funny because I also like Roman Reigns,
Yes.
and he's on SmackDown.
Mm-hmm.
And so since we don't really watch that one, it came from watching him at Crown Jewel.
Yes.
And I mean, I remember you said like, you know, this is like part of like the Rock's family,
Yes.
you know. I was like, oh, that's cool. So I was like, oh, this is cool to see because I obviously like The Rock. And once again, just his whole vibe. And makes sense. He's like a bad guy,
Mm-hmm.
but absolutely love him too.
Right.
So, and I think this, my shirt,
Mm-hmm.
one of the first shirts I got too was his.
Right.
Because I'm like, oh, he's just like so cool. And he's proven it time and time again. And then obviously going into WrestleMania, this whole storyline we have going on, I just love it. And now, especially with The Rock back, because I was such a big fan of The Rock, and you know they're like together in the bloodline. I actually really just like the whole bloodline.
I was gonna say,
let's be real.
what are your thoughts on the whole bloodline as a whole?
Well, I'm slowly getting into that.
Mhm.
Obviously, I wasn't as into it at first because I didn't watch SmackDown. I didn't know, but I I remember Jay
Yeah.
Uso, and I just didn't like him. And it's funny because I knew nothing about the bloodline,
Right.
this whole storyline. I was like, I just kind of don't like him. I don't know. Like, obviously he's like good at wrestling, but I was like, his vibe, and it's crazy because everybody likes Jay.
Yes. The yeet thing, the
Oh my
party he
gosh.
brings. Yeah. Like,
Yes, everybody likes him. And I'm like, I just like don't get it. And then you told me after this whole storyline of the bloodline and how, you know, he left, and I'm like, wow, his own twin brother. That's like really
Mhm.
crazy. And so I remember like, well, I don't like him, so I'm gonna like Jimmy,
Right.
because Jimmy's against him. But then seeing more of them leading up to WrestleMania and this whole bloodline, because obviously now like I know more about it, and like this is the big storyline, that's what they're talking about. I'm like, oh, I really like them because I like Solo. I think he
Yeah.
was. I don't know if he was there that night or it might have been the first Raw after that I saw him, and I was like, oh, he's pretty cool. And you're like, yeah, that's their brother too.
Yeah. 'Cause
So
you saw the one with like him versus John Cena.
yes, yeah, that might have been the
This
first
is
one.
Crown Jewel, I think. Yeah.
Okay, that might have been the first one. And I was like, oh, he's really cool too. And so I pretty much like anybody. So if anybody watched this last Monday's Raw, Obviously, I like them, their whole vibe, how they come out. With Roman, The Rock, we had
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy come out, and of course, I'm like, go Jimmy, even though everybody's Jay.
Yeah.
And then Solo. So I'm like, oh yeah, I really like this.
Right.
I really like them. I once again, obviously, it makes sense. I didn't realize it at the time, but of course, I gravitate towards them.
Mm-hmm. Well, that brings me to one of my favorites right now, current favorites, who, you know, you knew about before you knew who Roman Reigns was. That's
Yes.
Cody Rhodes.
Yes, because you talked about him all that. It was like CM Punk and Cody.
Yes.
And we talked about it last week. Cody coming out and just how happy you were, how excited. The crowd was excited.
Right.
And it's one of those things, too. It's not that I don't like Cody. I think he's pretty good.
Right.
But he goes against everybody that I'm against, of course.
Yes.
And, he's partnering with Seth freaking Rollins. And we know how I feel about that. But yeah, you love Cody.
Yeah. So I mean, I saw his return to WWE, him getting hurt, him coming back, and yeah, I think you've seen it since, like just the crowd reactions he gets. Like
Oh, yeah.
he's probably top reaction besides The Rock currently.
Oh, for sure. And obviously, it's always like this battle at all the shows of, The Rock and Cody and who's going to chant louder for who and who's going to boo The Rock or what. And I
Right.
just love it. It. Also, like the social media stuff that's been going on outside of the show, like with this whole storyline, this whole feud is so exciting.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's not the first time, but definitely the first time in a long time. There's a lot of questions going into WrestleMania as to what actually is going to happen. You go online, you read, everybody has thoughts about what's going to happen. This is going to happen night one. This is going to happen night two. And I think last year, you weren't into it at all last year, but it was a sure thing. Everybody was sure that Cody Rhodes was going to beat Roman, and he didn't.
Which, I mean, rightfully so. Like Roman's been the champion. And he's just so good.
But I think leaving that WrestleMania, everybody was like, "That's the wrong decision.
Oh, of
Shouldn't
course.
happen." A year later, hindsight's 2020. You see what they've done with The Rock coming back. Like nobody would have predicted that The Rock was going to come back.
No. And that's what I'm saying. I think it happened the way it was supposed to. Because this
Yes.
is great. I think like leading into this WrestleMania, this whole storyline, obviously these last few weeks on SmackDown and Raw have just been so cool, so insane. So I know you guys were sad last time. Crybabies,
Yeah, Cody Crybabies. Yep, that's me.
But it's perfect leading up into WrestleMania.
And I agree, and that's where I was going to ask because two of your favorites are The Rock and Roman. Like, do you think back when they kind of had the idea, it would have been better to do Rock versus Roman, or do you think this is the good route they should have taken?
Oh no, I love this route. I think it will be cool to see The Rock versus Roman later,
Mm-hmm.
but which is kind of weird because I'm like, who's going to be the bad guy? Who's going to be the good guy in that? They're just both bad, but
Yeah.
no, this is like so cool, and we've seen that. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the whole Cody and The Rock like back and forth is so exciting.
Yeah.
Like this was like a perfect time for me to start
Yeah.
watching.
Yeah. I mean, the excitement that you have during it, the excitement that everybody had. I mean, they said it last night on last night's Raw. Like wrestling's cool again because of The Rock. You know what I mean? Like
Oh, for sure.
hit the beatdown he had on Cody, the stuff he's been saying on social media. Like he's making it bigger than it's been in a long time.
Oh yeah, and he proved why I liked him. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like I've always liked it. He's just so good. The
Yes.
Rock is just to me the best at that character.
Mm-hmm.
And just the best at being bad. Like obviously I like so many of these people right now, but he's just so good at it. And I think after last week's Raw, just phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm obviously really excited. So I'm happy that they did The Rock and Roman versus Cody. Of course, Seth is in there too. And I'm like, well, Seth's not going to win. But obviously we go back and forth on that. But I love it. And I'm
Yeah.
really excited. And I think you are too.
Oh yeah, this is the most excited I've been. I think just in general, it's really good. It's a really good Mania. Like the whole entire card, all the matches look really good. But also, I get to share it with you for the first time. I don't have to just be like, "Oh, I'm gonna watch it," and not talk about it with you. We actually get to share it and watch it together.
I know. And I'm honestly surprised how excited I am. But it kind of makes sense too, because I have all my people going into this one. And like I said, I didn't plan this. This was
Mhm.
just, this is who I liked in that first day, maybe like the week after, at Crown Jewel. And I was like, yeah, I really like these people. And it just so happens that all of these people are now going to go to WrestleMania. Big matches I'm super excited for. And obviously, Gunther's like, so I'm so excited for that one.
Yes.
And he better win because I will be upset.
Yeah, I think the words you used was that you were gonna stop watching if he loses. I don't think you can do that now. We have a podcast, but I think
Yeah,
it was originally you said you were stop watching.
Yes, because I was actually mad when Sammy won the match, like over Chad Gable, because I was like, I like Chad. And I'm like, I believe him so much more than Sami Zayn. And so when Sammy won, I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, if he beats Gunther, there is no way he's going to beat him. Be like, well, we'll see. And I was like, oh no, I'm not going to watch it. I refuse. I was like, I will stop watching. I won't even watch Sundays. Obviously, I was being dramatic. I'll definitely watch it because I have the big matches, but
Yes.
it will upset me.
Yes.
He deserves to keep that Intercontinental. I don't think Sammy deserves it. I know that's like hot take. A lot of people like Sammy, but to me, no.
But isn't that really cool that like something is making you that upset about it? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's something that you're like that invested in.
Oh yeah, and I actually think that match, that when it was Sammy and Chad at the end,
Yes,
I was like in it.
Yes.
And I'm like, and I knew at one point I'm like, Chad's gonna lose.
Yeah.
I was like, darn it! Like I could just tell. Like I'm getting really good at the matches, like knowing like, okay, this person's gonna win, this person's not. But it was so good because it was like the back and forth, and I was like, oh my gosh, maybe he'll win. No, he didn't. And I was like, oh, maybe he'll get it. No, he didn't. And so that one actually was really good.
Yeah.
So I'll give Sami Zayn that one. But no, he can't beat him. Sorry.
That was probably one of your first ones where you were like invested in the match and like didn't like you knew it was you felt like you knew it was gonna happen, but there was like a chance that it might not.
Yes, because I was like, well, maybe because I'm trying to figure out like the storylines, and I was like, no, but like Chad, like he needs to do this for his daughter because there was that one episode where his daughter's crying, and I'm like, no, they're gonna give it to Chad, they're gonna give it to him. But then I was like, oh, but Sammy is so popular. And I was telling you this whole time we were watching, I was like, oh, but Sammy's like so popular, so they're going to give it to him. And I was going back and forth. I was like heightened emotion. So that was a really good one. So it's going to be a good match for me too. Because I'm going to love to see him do his thing. And Sammy's just not going to do well. But he needs to lose. I'm sorry. He just needs to.
That's your opinion. You know, a lot of people have a different opinion. You know?
Yeah, most people do. But I am all for Gunther. I'm all for him keeping his Intercontinental longer.
Right.
I'm ready for it.
I mean, again, I'm gonna play like fantasy booker and like what I would like to see. I do think it'd be nice if Gunther wins because I would like him to have it until next year.
Oh, for sure.
And take on like the world champion next year.
Yeah.
With both titles. You know what I mean?
And probably win, but
yeah, but like that would be cool to me. Who knows what's gonna happen? You know, probably not. But that would be if I was in charge. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I'm putting it out there that this is what needs to happen. I'm super excited.
Triple H, if you're watching.
Exactly. And I'm a huge fan.
Yeah.
So that means we're out here.
Yeah.
So let him keep it.
So with that, we should really probably run down WrestleMania. What's going to happen? What we think is going to happen or we want to happen. At least some of the big matches.
Oh, for sure. Because I'm like, I think I have it right.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously I don't know.
Yeah.
And we've gone back and forth talking about it. We know like some of the big matches we're like, yeah, this person's probably going to win. This person's not. I want to be like really confident that Gunther's going to win. But there's something about it that's telling me he might not. So that one I'm not really sure about. But I mean, looking at the women's, I'm almost 100% sure Rhea's winning over Becky.
Yes.
She might not, but I think she's holding on to that title.
Yes.
So that's my prediction for that one.
Okay, I agree with you.
100%.
What about Jimmy and Jay?
Oh, well, obviously I'm Jimmy. No yeet. But
you think Jay's going to win?
Jay's going to win.
Yeah.
Hands down. It would shock me if Jimmy won.
I agree.
So
yeah, 100% agree.
He's winning. I mean, gosh, they sell so many yeet shirts. Like, how can they have him lose, you know? I think I need to get a no yeet shirt because there's
if
no
you get
way.
a no yeet shirt, I'm going to get a yeet shirt.
Well, maybe we'll see that in a future episode. But yeah, I think they're for sure winning. I think it's on Saturday, the tag team.
The ladder match? Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously we know who I want to win. The Judgment Day.
Judgment Day, I think. Maybe Judgment Day. Yeah.
Yeah, probably. I'm going for Damien. I'm like, none of them can beat him. Which is funny because I do actually like a lot of the other tag teams going into it.
You like the New Day?
Love New Day. I do like Alpha Cat. Oh, no, they didn't make it. They didn't make it. I'm trying to think who else is in there that I like. Is DIY? Did they make it?
They made it.
Yeah, and I do like DIY. You do too.
Yes.
So there's a few that I like.
The Miz and R-Truth.
Oh, obviously. But let's be real with R-Truth. But he's so much fun to watch. And I love The Miz too. He's so much fun to watch. So I actually like a lot of it. So it's going to be a really exciting match.
Yeah.
I want Damien to win. Now, I don't know who's going to win that one because we have theories about what could happen, especially with Damien later, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So I want them to win. And if they don't win, then I know we'll talk about a little later what I want to happen with Damien.
Right.
So, but that one I think is going to be really good.
I think it's gonna be really good. And like, if I had to put some, like, I was gonna had to bet on it, I would probably say Miz and R-Truth are gonna win.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see. I wouldn't see that, but you know more about all this.
Yeah. I just think that they're pretty popular right now, and I think it's.
That is true.
I think if Judgment Day losing is a reason for them to kind of start breaking up.
Oh, which is true. But I also think, I mean, you said no because they kicked R-Truth out. I just don't see. He was such a big fan. I don't see where he's gonna.
Nah, he's a good guy. He's not.
No, he was a big fan. I think he's gonna give that one up for Judgment Day. But these are opinions. We don't know.
Of course. One more match that we haven't really talked about very much at all, but I think it's worth talking just because of who's in it, is the U.S. title match. So it's Kevin Owens, Randy Orton, and Logan Paul.
Oh yeah, and because Logan, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about this in another episode too. When you first told me like Logan Paul was wrestling, I remember I was like not happy
Yeah.
because I'm like, oh my gosh, like
You didn't even like wrestling at the time, and you did not like the fact that.
no, because I'm like the Paul brothers are just doing like all this stuff, and I'm like, is it just because their name? I like wasn't sure,
Yes.
and then I kind of learned more about them, with like the boxing and everything, and that they actually like were training.
Mm-hmm.
These aren't just like celebrities who just wanted to do it for fun. Like he actually put time into it. And so even though I wasn't a wrestling fan at first, I was like, oh gosh, here we go. But then watching him, because I think Crown Jewel,
Yep.
I watched it. Yeah, he had the Rey Mysterio match.
Yes.
Which of course I'm like, well, Rey Mysterio, that's who I'm going for. But I was very impressed with him. And I'm like, I think he does really good. And, I like that he's not so like celebrity, like, well, no, I have to win and I have to be like, no, I think he just like goes with it. I think he actually likes it. So I do really like Logan Paul.
Right.
And so I do think that's a good, Kevin Owens too. I've seen obviously only a few of his matches, but I always like him.
Right. And he's one of my like newer, newish kind of favorites. Like I really like him.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because like in match, like because there's some people that I obviously like for their character, but there's some that I like for the wrestling, and I think he's good.
Yeah.
But of course, I mean it's Randy Orton.
Yeah.
To me, there's nobody else that can win that one. I think it'll be a good one.
Yeah.
Randy's he's gonna get him.
Yeah. I think it'll be good. And I don't really know because again, I haven't really watched SmackDown, so I haven't been keeping up with the story or anything. But the little bits that I've seen, I think it'll be a good one no matter what. I just like bringing up Logan Paul because I think it's cool and we'll definitely talk about like celebrities in wrestling a little more.
Yeah, we'll do an episode on that because there's obviously people you'll bring up that I don't know, and I've had opinions on it, so we'll save for another episode.
For sure. So then, I mean, there's obviously some other SmackDown matches that we aren't too familiar with, so you probably don't need to get into too much, right?
No, like I said, obviously Jade and Bianca's team.
Yes.
I'm going for them just because I was so impressed with Jade. But yeah, the biggest matches obviously are going to be the tag team with Roman and The Rock, and then Cody and Seth.
Yes.
Which I think we agree on our theory with that one.
That first one I think we agree on.
Yeah, I think we know, like we're like sure on this that The Rock and Roman are going to win.
To me, it makes most sense. They're going to win.
Yes, because they want Bloodline rules.
Bloodline rules the next day.
Which makes it so fun.
Yes. So, that's what I think. They're going to win. I also think it makes sense that, like, The Rock has one match. They're not going to make him lose the one match he's coming back for.
Yeah, he's not going to lose his match. Yeah.
I could even see him getting the victor, him winning, like him being the one to pin.
Oh, for sure. Even though Roman, like, he's a tribal chief, but I think that's going to kind of be a thing, right?
The tribal chief, final boss, they're kind of...
Yeah, but Rock's going to take that. So it's like, it's going to prepare for this bigger thing with him and Roman.
That's exactly what I feel.
Which we'll talk about more of that because you have some theories on the next night's biggest match.
Yes.
Which, actually, first of all, before we get into that one, because we know Sunday starts with Drew
and Seth. Yes.
We obviously know who I want.
Yes.
But I think we have some theories on that too.
Right. Well, I mean, the coolest thing about that match is that CM Punk will be on commentary. So I'm super excited for that, obviously.
Him and I'm hoping my boy Pat. I love Pat.
Yeah, that's real quick. We can take a little side detour here and talk about your love of Pat McAfee, who I mean isn't a wrestler, but he's wrestled some matches and he's a commentator.
Oh, yeah, he makes Raw worth watching to me.
Yeah,
I just love him. I think he's hilarious. Him and Michael Cole too. I think they work really well together.
They do. Yeah.
but he's just so funny. He makes it fun. It's like, even in the times where I'm like, I don't really know what's going on or what, I just love listening.
Right.
And so, like, our next live show we go to, I'm going to be a little sad because I'm not going to be able to, like, listen. So I might have to even watch it after to see. Yeah, he makes it, like, so worth it for me.
Yeah, which I agree. So I do think that most likely it'll be him, Michael Cole, and CM Punk on the commentary. So that'd be a really good match if that's the
Hope so.
case. It'd be really fun.
Oh, yeah, because it's already a good match. I'm already looking forward to it because I just absolutely want Drew to demolish Seth.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a theory about that one.
Well, we have
Possibly.
couple different theories, so go with yours first.
Well, we know that Damien has not cashed in yet.
Yep.
And we know there's another Money in the Bank coming up soon-ish.
Probably sometime. I don't know if they've officially announced it. They may have. I don't know, but sometime around June is usually when June, July.
Yeah, I know they've been already talking about who the next people will be in it. So I'm like, well, Damien has to cash in. And so I know one of the theories that I have is, and to me, either one can lose and Damien's going to cash in. I think that Drew's going to win and then Damien's going to cash in on Drew, which is so hard for me.
Right.
Because I like both of them. And I'm like, well, no, I want, Drew to have it and to take it. But I'm also like, oh, but good for Damien. So yeah, that's a hard one.
Mm-hmm.
But I also could see it going the other way where Seth wins and then Damien cashes in. Which, if Seth's going to win, that's the only thing for me.
Yeah.
That's what I need.
Yeah. Now, do you think Damien, if he cashes in, that he's actually going to win it? Or do you think he's going to cash in and lose?
I mean, he's got to win it. He has to, because I do think you're right. The Judgment Day is like splitting up.
Mm-hmm.
And unless that's going to be the storyline, is they don't help him.
Right.
And he loses it. So he loses his Money in the Bank cash in. He doesn't get the title. And they didn't help. And so now he's going to move on.
And I could see that happening, especially, there's a lot of talk with like the Dom stuff about like communication. They're not talking to each other. So if it's one of those things where he said like he just decided to do it, didn't tell anybody, of course not going to be out there to help him.
But yeah, then he's going to be mad. So I don't know. But I think that's the match. If he's going to cash in, I think that's a match he's going to cash in on.
And I would agree. I think that's the most likely scenario if he's going to cash in. I also think there's a scenario where he cashes in the middle of the match. I know you don't know that, but Seth Rollins cashed in in the middle of Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar's WrestleMania match and made it a triple threat to win. And I could see that happening and him winning the match that way. And that would even push Drew over the edge even more of like, costing him his shot.
Well, and that's the other thing. We've clearly seen this thing between Damien and Drew.
Yes.
And especially if he cashed in on Drew or did that and won, it's going to push that even more.
Yes.
So I have a pretty strong feeling that if he's going to cash in at WrestleMania, that's the match.
Yes.
I just don't know whether or not he's going to win. And I don't know who in that match they're going to let win, even if he doesn't. So that one, I don't know.
Yeah. Then the next one.
The big one.
Yep. Cody versus Roman 2.
Cody versus Roman. Now, of course, I love Roman and I think he should keep it.
Yeah.
But I do think they're going to let Cody win.
They can't let him lose twice in a row. I really don't think they can let him lose twice in a row.
I think they can. But what I think they're setting up for is they want bloodline rules. So, and they've just been setting up The Rock has just been getting him.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to be such like a redemption story too. Like lost night one. So now he has to do bloodline rules. So how much like sweeter is that victory when he gets to win, not even on his terms, like on bad terms.
Right. And like I said, I agree with that. I also just don't think that, like, how do you lose twice? Like, how do you come back from that, losing twice at WrestleMania?
No, yeah, that's true. And we have the theory too that whether The Rock turns on Roman or he doesn't help him somehow, Cody's going to win. And I think that's also setting up for Roman to kind of have this issue.
Yes.
So, especially with The Rock. So we're not 100% sure, but we kind of, I mean, that's a theory a lot of people have is maybe The Rock will turn on him or something. But it would make sense that Roman will finally lose. And this is going to set up for his next storyline.
He somehow blames The Rock. Whether The Rock
100%.
actually turns or just, is there, he's going to blame The Rock.
Yeah, like he didn't show up and help because it's bloodline rules, right? So whether he turns on him or he just doesn't help, that doesn't help.
Right.
And that's going to piss him off. So yes, I do think that, first of all, Cody, he's going to win. It's time.
Mm-hmm.
But even though that hurts me because I want Roman to win.
Right.
But I do think it sets up for Roman to come back and then him and The Rock will finally have their time.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. Though a couple things I want to throw by you and see what you think about it. There's some theories online going around that Seth might turn on Cody.
Yes. I like that idea, but I don't see it personally. It'd be cool,
No.
because it proves that Seth, I don't like him. But no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I don't know because I think we are going to have the issue the next night with the bloodline and something with Roman and The Rock. I don't know if they would do like all these like turning on, but it could make sense why they're going to lose too, though. Him and
hmm
Cody will lose to Rock and Roman, but also like Seth is like a good guy, so wouldn't that kind of be like this bad thing?
But that's what I would think, especially with him going against Drew the next day. Like, you don't want Seth to turn on the biggest good guy in the company and then go in to face Drew as like a not good guy either. You know what I mean? Then you have two people who are both bad guys facing each other, which has happened, but I don't think they're going to want that.
No, and we saw a little snippet last Monday of Drew
Talking to Paul Heyman.
talking to Paul Heyman. So that could be interesting. And that's another reason why I think Drew might win that match because does he have some bloodline rules going on too?
Yeah, because I could see, The Rock's made comments about like when we win, we're going to take your title to Seth. I could see them all of a sudden springing it on night two, like, hey, guess what? Your match is bloodline rules too.
Exactly, which I think would be a great storyline.
Yes.
And so, yeah, then Drew has that help. So yeah,
Yes.
I don't I've seen that theory, but I don't really like it. That Seth's gonna turn.
I agree. The other thing I'd question, I know again this is something that you don't know anything about, not a lot at least, is like is Cody gonna have help? So there's a lot of talk about like is his brother gonna show up or some other people that maybe are no longer with the AEW anymore. They're maybe with coming over to WWE. So is he gonna have help? And I think that's a strong possibility.
Well, he's at least gonna have help from Jay.
Yes,
I think, especially with bloodline rules, because
and probably Sammy.
oh yeah, but definitely Jay, right? Because if Jimmy's gonna be there helping with Roman, Jay's gonna
Mm-hmm.
have to come out. So yes, he's gonna have help too. He's not stupid. He's setting himself up,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that he has to also have something if it's
Yeah.
bloodline rules.
Right.
So yeah, I think so.
So I don't know. It'll be very interesting. I'm excited for. I'm excited for you to watch your first WrestleMania.
Oh, and I'm really excited because you've shown me some clips of like some past WrestleManias and some matches from some, but obviously I wasn't there for that or I wasn't really into it. I didn't know the storylines. This one, it's like I'm so into the storyline. Plus, like I said, it just so happens that a lot of these people that I just immediately liked are having really big matches.
Right.
So I'm super excited.
And what are the odds that the people that you like are going against the people that I like? You know what I mean?
I mean, knowing us, that
That's
actually
true.
makes a
That
lot
makes
of
a lot of sense.
sense.
That's true.
Makes so much sense. And like I said, that was not planned. It just was. I think it's just our personalities and who we like, and it honestly makes a lot of sense. So it's going to be exciting for us too, watching
Mm-hmm.
it, knowing that we really want different people to win. So we'll see, if you get to sleep in the room that night, if
Yeah,
I'm
or
mad.
not.
No, I'm just playing. But honestly, yeah, I'm really excited. I think those are the majority of our predictions. We'll see how right we are. And if we're
Yes.
really wrong, then next week's episode's going to be a little awkward.
A little awkward.
But I think that's definitely what next week we have to talk about. We're going to put our little history lesson on hold because it's WrestleMania and there's so many big things. And I mean, you can also kind of teach me a lot of what's going to happen next. So
Oh,
that's definitely next week.
I'm sure I can fit some kind of history in there somewhere.
Oh, for sure. Because, you're going to have to explain to me all this WrestleMania and what's going to come next after, the biggest event of the year is like over. So
Yes.
that's definitely next week. So we're going to talk all about what actually happens, if we were right or wrong. So maybe put your comments of what you guys think is going to happen
Mm-hmm.
and if we're wrong or right. And then next week we'll find out if everyone's right or not.
Yeah, let's just get ready to watch a lot of wrestling in the next week. Yeah. Two full
Hours.
days
Hmm.
plus a Raw afterwards that we can't miss. So
Oh, for sure.
yeah,
But I'm excited.
I'm very excited for
I'm
for
surprised.
this weekend and next week.
Yes. I'm surprised how excited I am.
Me
And
too.
there's definitely people who know me that would be like, wow, really?
Yeah.
But I am pumped.
Yeah. Well, I am also pumped. So, uh, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm excited for next week.
Me too. I love wrestling.
I know.